A people without a leader. For 30 days, Israel wept in the plains of Moab. The servant of the Lord, the one who brought them out of Egypt, was no longer among them. Then the Lord spoke to Joshua. "Moses, my servant, is dead. Now it is time to cross the Jordan, you and all these people, to the land I am giving you." The promise remained. The direction had been given, and Joshua needed to get up. The death of Moses marked a profound rupture in the history of Israel. For 40 years, he was the leader chosen by God to lead the people out of Egypt, through the desert, and to establish the covenant at Sinai. His presence represented direction, authority, and intercession. Now that time had come to an end. Israel was encamped in the plains of Moab, on the banks of the Jordan River. On the other side lay Canaan, the land promised to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. It was not merely a territory. It was the fulfillment of a divine word that had spanned generations. Yet the promise had not yet become a visible reality. The Jordan River lay before them, and beyond the river, fortified cities and settled peoples occupied the land. It was a new generation. Many had not witnessed the Exodus, but had grown up hearing about the Lord's deeds in Egypt and in the desert. They knew the stories. Now they would have to experience the fulfillment. It is in this context that God speaks to Joshua, son of Nun, Moses' servant. He does not appear unprepared. He had already demonstrated faithfulness, courage, and perseverance. He was one of the spies who trusted in the promise when others doubted. He walked alongside Moses for years, but now the responsibility was different. The Lord reaffirms his promise and guarantees his presence. The mission is clear: to cross the Jordan and lead the people to the land he is giving them. The condition is also clear: to remain faithful to the law, not to stray, to trust. Joshua's journey begins at a time of transition, between grief and promise, between the past that is ending, and the future that must be conquered by faith. And before we continue this extraordinary journey through the story of Joshua, I want to ask you something very simple, but that makes a huge difference for us. If you love the Word of God, if this type of content strengthens your faith and helps you understand the Scriptures better, subscribe to the channel now and like this video. It's completely free. It costs you nothing. But for us, it means support, encouragement, and the opportunity to continue producing profound biblical content like this. Every subscription and every like helps us reach more people with the message of the Bible, with hope, faith, and the truth of God's promises. If this story speaks to your heart, support this work. Now, let's continue. Assuming leadership of Israel was not merely about occupying a position, it was about succeeding Moses. The Bible declares that there has never again arisen in Israel a prophet like Moses, whom the Lord knew face to face. This statement concludes Deuteronomy like a seal of greatness. And it is precisely after this declaration that the book of Joshua begins. From a human perspective, the comparison would be inevitable. Moses confronted Pharaoh. He parted the Red Sea. He received the law. He interceded when the people were nearly destroyed. His authority came not only from his position, but from the history he had built before the nation. Joshua now needed to walk in that shadow. But God is not calling him to be a new Moses. God is calling him to fulfill a new stage. The promise continues, and the mission moves forward. The Lord affirms that just as it was with Moses, so it would be with Joshua. This does not mean that he would repeat the same deeds in the same way. It means that the divine presence would remain. And then comes the order that shapes the beginning of his leadership: to be strong and courageous. not as a motivational cry, but as a spiritual foundation. The courage required was not based on military skill or personal charisma. It was linked to obedience to the law. This book of the law shall not depart from your mouth, but you shall meditate on it day and night. The success of the journey would depend on faithfulness to the word. Before crossing any river, Joshua needed to overcome the internal challenge of responsibility. He doesn't begin with grandiose speeches. He begins by organizing the people. He orders the officers to prepare provisions, because within 3 days, they would cross the Jordan. He speaks to the tribes of Reuben, Gad, and the half-tribe of Manasseh, reminding them of the commitment made back in the days of Moses. They would help their brothers in the conquest before settling permanently. The people's response is significant. They declare that they will obey, just as they obeyed Moses. But they add something revealing. Only may the Lord your God be with you, as he was with Moses. Joshua's leadership would not be consolidated by the memory of the past, but by the confirmation of God's presence in the present. And the journey begins to move. Joshua's leadership would not be proven by words alone, but by concrete action. The order had already been given: cross the Jordan. The time for preparation was ending. Now it was necessary to advance. Before the crossing, Joshua makes a strategic decision. He secretly sends 2 men to observe Jericho. This is not a matter of disbelief, as in the previous generation. 40 years earlier, 12 spies had been sent, and the negative report of 10 of them spread fear throughout the camp. The result was rebellion and delay. This time, the mission is different. There is no public consultation, no collective debate. Information is restricted. The leadership acts with discretion. The spies enter Jericho and stay at Rahab's house. The text doesn't romanticize the city. Jericho was fortified, organized, and vigilant. The king quickly becomes aware of the Israelites' presence. This reveals something important. Israel was already known. News of their approach had spread. Rahab hid the spies on the roof, under stalks of flax. When questioned, she claimed the men had already left. She took a real risk. But the reason for her actions is revealing. Her words, recorded in Joshua 2, demonstrate something striking. Fear had gripped the land. She declares that the inhabitants heard how the Lord dried up the waters of the Red Sea and how he defeated the Amorite kings beyond the Jordan. When we heard this, our hearts melted. The confidence that Israel had lacked in the past now dominated its enemies. Faith was being reversed. The Rahab recognizes something even deeper. The Lord your God is God in heaven above and on the earth below. This confession resonates like a theological declaration from within Canaan. Even before the first battle, God was already working behind the scenes, preparing hearts and circumstances. The spies promised preservation for Rahab and her family in exchange for a sign, a scarlet cord tied to the window. It is not a decorative detail. It is a visible mark of covenant. Just as the blood on the doorpost in Egypt had signaled protection, now a red thread would indicate salvation amidst judgment. The spies return and report to Joshua. The Lord has certainly given all this land into our hands. The difference from the past is clear. There is no comparison with giants. There is no talk of defeat. There is conviction. But the real test was still before them: the Jordan River. The text makes a point of noting an essential detail. The river overflowed all its banks during that harvest time. It was not a period of low water. It was not a simple crossing. Humanly speaking, the scenario was unfavorable. Then Joshua rose early in the morning. The expression indicates urgency and decisiveness. He did not delay. The people left Shittim and approached the river. They remained there for 3 days. The tension must have been growing. The river flowed before them, hindering their natural progress. The officers walk through the camp and give specific instructions. When they see the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord being carried by the Levitical priests, they should set out and follow it. But they should keep a distance of about 2,000 cubits. The reason is stated, so that you may know the way you must go, for you have never passed this way before. The Ark represents the presence of God. There would be no warriors in the front. There would be no strategists. The divine presence would go first. Joshua also commands the people, "Consecrate yourselves, for tomorrow the Lord will do wonders among you." Before the miracle, there is consecration. Before divine intervention, there is spiritual preparation. Then comes the decisive moment. The priest took the ark and advanced toward the Jordan. The text describes the sequence precisely. When the feet of the priest carrying the ark touched the edge of the waters, the flow was interrupted. The waters that came down from upstream rose up in a heap, far away, at the city of Adam. Those that flowed down toward the Sea of Arabah were completely cut off. The people are crossing on dry land. The crossing of the Jordan River doesn't exactly replicate the Red Sea, but it bears undeniable parallels. A new generation experiences a miracle similar to what their parents witnessed. God confirms to them that He remains the same. The priests stand firm in the middle of the dry riverbed until all the people have finished crossing. It is not a hurried passage. It is organized. Tribe after tribe, family after family. Warriors from the tribes of Reuben, Gad, and half the tribe of Manasseh cross armed ahead of their brothers, as they had promised. When the last Israelite steps across, Joshua receives new instructions. 12 men, one from each tribe, are to take 12 stones from the middle of the Jordan and from the place where the priest stood and carry them to the camp. The stones are not decorative, they are memorials. Joshua explains that in the future, when his children asked about the meaning of those stones, the answer should be clear. The waters of the Jordan were cut off before the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord. The memorial would serve as a permanent testimony. Only after the stones are removed and the priests emerge from the riverbed do the waters return to their normal course. The miracle ends at the exact moment determined by God. The text states something crucial. On that day, the Lord exalted Joshua in the sight of all Israel, and they feared him, as they had feared Moses. The authority of the new leader is publicly confirmed through divine intervention. The first step of confidence wasn't marching against walls. It was putting your feet in the water before the path was visible. Joshua's leadership demonstrated something fundamental. Obedience precedes miracles. The people didn't cross because they saw the waters part. The waters parted because the priests advanced according to the word of the Lord. Upon arriving at Gilgal, on the west side of the Jordan, the 12 stones are erected. The place becomes a starting point. There the desert ends. There the conquest officially begins. But before any military confrontation, God reinforces something even deeper. Israel needed to remember who had led them there. The advance toward the Promised Land does not begin with raised swords. It begins with remembrance, sanctification, and trust. The river was behind them. The promise was now beneath their feet. And now I want to hear from you. If you were there, standing before the overflowing Jordan River, would you have taken the first step? Write in the comments, "I trust in God's promises," if you also choose to move forward, even when the path is not yet visible. Your comment is not just an interaction, it's a declaration of faith. And while you're commenting, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It's free, but it makes a huge difference to us to continue bringing the word with depth and truth. Because the crossing happened, but the greatest challenges were yet to come. Jericho was closed. The text is emphatic. It was tightly shut up because of the children of Israel. No one went out. No one came in. The city knew something was happening. Fear had already spread, but fear did not produce surrender. It produced resistance. It was the first stronghold before them. From a human perspective, Jericho represented a strategic obstacle. It was a walled, protected, and organized city. Israel was still establishing itself in the land. It had no walls, no consolidated urban centers. It was a newly arrived people. But the Lord speaks to Joshua again. "Look, I have given Jericho into your hand, its king and its mighty men." The statement is in the past tense. Even before the battle begins, God declares that the city has already been delivered. However, the method would not be conventional. The instruction is detailed. For 6 days, the men of war would march around the city once a day. 7 priests would carry 7 trumpets of ram's horns before the ark. On the 7th day, they would march around the city 7 times. At the prolonged sound of the trumpet, all the people would shout. There is no mention of battering rams. There are no ladders. There is no direct attack. It is an act of public obedience. Joshua relayed the instructions exactly as he had received them. The people were to march in silence. Not a single word was to come out of their mouths until the appointed day. Imagine a scene: armed men walking around the wall, priests blowing trumpets, the Ark of the Covenant in the center, the city watching from above. Day after day, the same route. No provocation recorded. No immediate military response. Just repetition. The divine strategy demands discipline. It's not a momentary burst of faith. It's 7 days of consistency. On the 7th day, they rise at dawn. They circle the city 7 times. At the appointed time, the trumpets sound a long blast. Joshua commands, "Shout, for the Lord has given you the city." The people are shouting, and the text states directly, "The wall fell down." There is no technical description. There is no structural explanation. The account states the outcome. Each one climbs directly ahead. The city is taken. Jericho becomes the first concrete evidence that the promise is advancing. It wasn't through the strength accumulated in the desert. It wasn't through military experience. It was through obedience to the word received. Rahab and her family are preserved, as stipulated in the oath made by the spies. The scarlet cord fulfilled its purpose. Fidelity to a covenant was honored. But the conquest doesn't end there. After Jericho, the people advanced against Ai. This time, Joshua sent men to observe the city. The report seemed simple. It wouldn't be necessary to send the entire army. 2,000 or 3,000 men would suffice. The decision is made based on this assessment. But something was wrong. Israel is defeated. About 36 men die. The people flee before the men of Ai. The nation's heart melts. The difference between Jericho and Ai lies not in the strength of the city. It lies in the spiritual condition of the people. Joshua tears his clothes, prostrates himself with his face to the ground before the ark until evening. He cries out to the Lord. He asks why they crossed the Jordan only to be defeated. Then the Lord answers clearly, "Israel has sinned." Achan, from the tribe of Judah, had taken for himself some of what was forbidden in Jericho. The city had been placed under anathema. The spoils were to be consecrated to the Lord. The disobedience of one man brought consequences for the entire community. The challenge now was not military. It was moral. Through a lottery, tribe by tribe, family by family, Achan is identified. He confesses to having taken a Babylonian cloak, 200 shekels of silver, and a bar of gold, hiding them in his tent. Hidden sin is exposed. The discipline is severe. Evil is removed from among the people. Only after this does the Lord declare, "Do not be afraid or dismayed." The new strategy for Ai is different. On this time, there is an ambush. There is tactical movement. The city is lured out and then taken. The king of Ai is defeated. The contrast is evident. When there was complete obedience, there was supernatural victory. When there was hidden deviation, there was unexpected defeat. The presence of God in the midst of the people was the true guarantee of success. After this victory, Joshua builds an altar to the Lord on Mount Ebal, as it was written in the law of Moses. He offers burnt offerings and peace offerings. He writes a copy of the law on stones. Before all Israel, men, women, children, and foreigners, the law is read aloud. The conquest of the land is progressing, but the word remains central. The challenges weren't just external walls. They were internal temptations, rash decisions, hidden sins. Joshua's leadership is shaped by this process. He learns that every battle depends on the spiritual condition of the nation. The leader's faith influences the people. The people's obedience determines the course of the conquest. The journey to the promised land would not be an automatic sequence of victories. There would be opposition. There would be tension. There would be correction. But one truth was being established beyond doubt. When Israel walked in faithfulness, the Lord fought for them. And the land began, little by little, to recognize that it was not just an army that had arrived. They were a people led by the God who keeps his promises. After the victory at Ai and the public renewal of the alliance on Mount Ebal, something began to change in the Canaanite landscape. News spread. The text records that the kings of the Hittites, Amorites, Canaanites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites heard what was happening. Their reaction was not surrender. It was coalition. Several kings joined together to fight against Israel, but not all chose direct warfare. The inhabitants of Gibeon adopted another strategy. Knowing of the victories at Jericho and Ai, they decided to act cunningly. They sent men with worn-out clothes, patched sandals, and moldy bread. They presented themselves as travelers from a distant land, claiming to have heard of the name of the Lord and of the deeds performed in Egypt and beyond the Jordan. The request was simple: to form an alliance. And Israel's mistake is accurately described. The leaders examined the provisions, but did not consult the Lord. They trusted in the appearance of the evidence. Joshua made peace with them and established an oath. 3 days later, they discovered that Gibeon was a nearby city. The covenant could not be broken, for it had been made in the name of the Lord. The deception brought consequences. The Gibeonites would be spared, but they would become servants, woodcutters, and water carriers for the congregation and for the altar of the Lord. Even one mistake did not negate God's faithfulness, but it did leave a clear lesson. Spiritual decisions cannot be based solely on appearances. The alliance with Gibeon triggered a new conflict. 5 Amorite kings from Jerusalem, Hebron, Jarmuth, Lachish, and Eglon joined forces against Gibeon for having made peace with Israel. The city then sent an urgent message to Joshua asking for help. Joshua does not hesitate. He marches up from Gilgal during the night with the entire army. The march is swift. The response is immediate. God speaks again. "Do not fear them, for I have delivered them into your hands. Not one of them will be able to withstand you." The attack is surprising. The Lord throws them into confusion before Israel. The pursuit extends up the ascent of Beth Horon. And then something extraordinary happens. While they were fleeing, large stones fell from the sky upon them as far as Azekah, and more died than the children of Israel killed with the sword. The battle did not depend solely on human strength. And it is at this moment that Joshua utters one of the most striking declarations in the book. Before all Israel, he speaks to the Lord. "Sun, stand still at Gibeon, and you, moon, at the valley of Aijalon." The text states that the sun stood still, and the moon stopped until the people had avenged themselves on their enemies. It adds, "There has never been a day like it, that the Lord listened to the voice of a man, for the Lord fought for Israel." The narrative offers no scientific explanation. It records the event as a singular divine intervention. The central point is not the phenomenon itself, but the final statement: God fought for his people. The 5 kings are captured and executed. Their cities are conquered. The southern campaign advances decisively. Then Joshua turned his attention to the north. Jabin, king of Hazor, formed another large coalition, described as numerous as the sand on the seashore, with many horses and chariots. It was a military force superior in technology and numbers. Again, the Lord says, "Do not be afraid of them. Tomorrow at this time, I will deliver them up slain before Israel." Joshua makes a surprise attack near the waters of Merom. The enemy army is defeated. The horses are hamstringed and the chariots burned, according to divine instruction. Hazor, the main city of that coalition, is captured and burned. The text summarizes: Joshua took all that land, just as the Lord had told Moses. It was not an instant victory. The book itself states that the war lasted many days. There was persistence, resistance, gradual advance. City after city was confronted. But one detail remains constant throughout the narrative. Joshua did not deviate from what the Lord had commanded Moses. Faithfulness to divine instruction continued to be the key to victory. And then the account makes a powerful statement. So Joshua took all this land, and the land had rest from war. The promise made to Abraham, renewed to Isaac, reaffirmed to Jacob, and remembered by Moses, was beginning to materialize before the eyes of that generation. Not as a distant concept, but as real territory, conquered cities, and defined borders. The promise was ceasing to be an expectation and becoming an inheritance. The process, however, was not without its challenges. Each coalition represented an attempt to halt the advance. Each battle demanded renewed trust. Each decision required continued dependence. What becomes evident is that the conquest was not the result of human supremacy, but of God's faithfulness to his word. The text repeats in different ways that the Lord delivered the enemies into the hands of Israel. Joshua's journey shows that the promise does not eliminate the need for struggle. It guarantees the ultimate purpose, but the path involves confrontations, choices, and perseverance. When the land began to rest from war, it did not mean a total absence of future challenges. It meant that the main phase of conquest had been established. The promise was finally becoming a reality for a generation that chose to trust. The promise became reality, but not without struggle, not without perseverance, not without total trust in God. And now I want to ask you, do you believe that God's promises are still being fulfilled today? If this journey is strengthening your faith, write in the comments. God is faithful to fulfill his promises. Let's fill this space with declarations of faith. If this content is enriching your life, please like and subscribe to the channel. It's free, but it helps us continue to share the word with depth, clarity, and truth, because the story isn't over yet. Joshua's greatest victory wasn't conquering cities. It was about leaving a legacy. With the major campaigns concluded, the biblical narrative begins to shift its pace. The land had rested from war, but there was still territory to be organized. The promise was not just to conquer, it was to establish an inheritance. Joshua was already advanced in age when the Lord told him that there was still much land left to possess. The conquest had weakened the major centers of resistance, but the process of occupation and consolidation would require continuity. The promise was being fulfilled progressively. The division of the land among the tribes then begins. Caleb approaches Joshua at Gilgal with a specific request. He reminds him of the promise made 45 years earlier, when they both returned from the spy mission. While most feared, he remained faithful. now at 85 years old, and he declares something remarkable. He was still as strong as the day Moses sent him. He asked for the mountainous region where the Anakim lived, the same giants who had previously caused fear. Joshua blesses him and gives him Hebron as an inheritance. This moment reveals something profound about that generation. The faith that began in the desert was still alive. The man who trusted when he was young continues to trust in old age. The distribution of land follows defined criteria. Tribe by tribe receives its portion. The Levites, however, do not receive a specific territory, for the Lord is their inheritance. Cities are designated, including cities of refuge, as instructed in the law of Moses, to protect anyone who unintentionally killed someone until proper judgment. Nothing is done haphazardly. The organization of the land reflects order and fidelity to previously received instructions. The text makes a powerful statement at that moment. Not one of all the good promises the Lord had made to the house of Israel failed. Everyone was fulfilled. This statement serves as a historical seal. The narrative that began with a promise made to Abraham now records its concrete fulfillment in the generation of Joshua. With the territory established, Joshua summons the tribes of Reuben, Gad, and the half-tribe of Manasseh. They had crossed the Jordan River armed to help their brothers, even though they possessed an inheritance on the eastern side. They kept their word. Now they are free to return to their lands. Before they depart, Joshua exhorts them to remain faithful to the Lord, keeping his commandments and walking in his ways. And spiritual unity should be preserved, even with geographical separation. When they return, they build a large altar by the Jordan River. The other tribes, hearing about this, fear it is an act of rebellion against the Lord. They gather to confront the situation. The tension is real, but the dialogue clarifies. The altar was not for sacrifice, but as a testimony between generations, to remind them that they too belong to the Lord. The conflict is resolved without war. This episode demonstrates that the greatest danger at that stage was not military, but spiritual. Unity in worship was essential to maintaining the people's identity. As time passed, Joshua grew old. He gathered all of Israel at Shechem. There he delivered a speech that was not military, but spiritual. He recounted the history from the days of Abraham, on through the liberation from Egypt, the crossing of the desert, the victories over kings, and the possession of the land. He emphasizes that it was not by sword or bow that they conquered the land, but by the action of the Lord. And then he makes a decisive appeal. Choose this day whom you will serve. Joshua does not impose an automatic decision. He presents the people with a conscious choice. Would they serve the old gods or the Lord who had freed them? His own statement echoes as a synthesis of his life. As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. The people respond by affirming that they too will serve the Lord. Joshua warns them about the seriousness of this commitment. It is not a momentary emotional declaration. It is a conscious covenant. A stone is erected as a testament to that decision. Shortly afterward, Joshua died at the age of 110. He was buried in the land of his inheritance, in Timnath-Serah. The text records that Israel served the Lord all the days of Joshua and of the elders who outlived him. Joshua's leadership was not marked solely by military conquests. It was marked by constant faithfulness to the word, the centrality of God's presence, and the preservation of the nation's spiritual identity. He didn't part the seas like Moses. He didn't receive tablets on Sinai. But he led a generation to experience the fulfillment of the promise. He taught in practice that victory begins with obedience. His legacy lies not only in the cities he captured, but in the final declaration that echoes through the centuries, choosing to serve the Lord. The journey that began with an overflowing river ends with a nation firmly rooted in its heritage. The promise was fulfilled. but the loyalty needed to continue. Joshua's journey began with mourning. Moses had died. The past was over. Before them lay an overflowing river and a land occupied by enemies. Nothing indicated ease. Nothing suggested a simple path. But God had spoken. And throughout this story, something became clear. The promise was never in jeopardy. What was at stake was the people's response to God's word. Joshua was not great in his own right. He did not build his leadership on charisma, military strength, or extraordinary strategies. His strength lay in obedience. His courage came from the presence of the Lord. His security was in the law, which he meditated on day and night. He crossed the Jordan because he trusted. He marched around Jericho because he obeyed. He corrected the sin in Ai because he feared God. He faced powerful coalitions because he knew that the Lord fought for Israel. The promise made to Abraham centuries before became a reality before his very eyes, not through human merit, but through divine faithfulness. And perhaps that is the great lesson of the journey. God fulfills what he promises, but fulfillment requires faith. It requires holiness. It requires conscious decisions. At the end of his life, Joshua did not gather the people to celebrate military victories. He gathered them to ask a question. Choose this day whom you will serve. Because the greatest conquest was not territorial. It was spiritual. The land could be inherited. The cities could be occupied. But if the heart turned away, everything would be compromised. Joshua's legacy lies not only in the battles won, but also in his daily choice to remain faithful. Today, perhaps you too are facing a Jordan River. Perhaps there are walls that seem insurmountable. Perhaps there are decisions that require courage. The story of Joshua reminds us that God's presence is sufficient, that obedience precedes miracles, that the promise remains firm, even when the situation seems challenging. God remains faithful. And the question that has echoed since Shechem still resonates today. Whom will you serve? If this journey has strengthened your faith, write in the comments, "As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord." May this declaration not be just a phrase, but a decision. If this content has enriched your life, please like and subscribe to the channel. It's free, but it greatly helps us to continue producing in-depth, scripturally faithful, and meaningful Bible studies. May the story of Joshua not end here. May she remain in your life, because the same God who led Israel to the Promised Land continues to lead those who trust in him.